Hey, it's Adriana, and here I have my digital remediation project. This is solely based off of my literacy narrative. I completed my literacy narrative back in November in 2019, and it was a really good piece of work. So I decided that I wanted to dedicate my digital remediation project to that. So what you see in my digital remediation is a canvas that has a bunch of different symbols on it. And these symbols simply apply to my literacy journey. I talk about some of these things within my literacy journey, and I'm just gonna basically explain why they're important to my literacy journey and go from there. So in the canvas, you see that I have an eye, an ear, and this is simply because I started off my literacy narrative by talking about how we as humans are naturally bound to recall our senses, which is sight, hearing, touch, smell, and taste, right? I found that sight and hearing was very prominent in my literacy journey, as those were two of the things that I pretty much used that helped me shape kind of build the foundation of my journey, right? I needed those two senses in order to progress in that. And I talked about how I use my senses in developing complex skill of interpreting and learning letters and so forth, right? And those are two things that pretty much I needed in order to further my journey within literacy. The thing that you can see on my canvas is that I have my name, and it's spelled Adirana, and that's not how you spell my name, but that's just the way I spelled it when I was first learning how to write my name and whatnot. You also see that I have Crayola crowns, and it's kind of hard to see, but I also have a long red line. I basically talked about how this was my earliest memory of my literary journey, right? I was writing on walls with crowns. Don't do that. Tell your kids don't do that. But this basically helped me develop a specific thinking, right? This thinking is simply cognitive thinking, right? Which you can also see, I kind of have a head, and it's hard to see, but it's filled with little things, little thoughts that people think about, children specifically think about. But doing this, it kind of helped me develop that thinking, right? My long red lines became circles and shapes, and then soon they started looking like letters of the alphabet. So while I was probably developing an interest for art, I also was able to get the hang of writing and putting things to use. So the way I'm explaining this all is kind of in a timeline. After my years of writing on walls and whatnot, I began to have books placed in front of me, and this was basically very prominent within my literacy journey, my literary journey. It became a priority to read every night because I had to complete a reading log every week. Okay, I spent nights reading with my grandmother, word for word, Dora Ready to Read books, Dr. Seuss books, The Beginner's Bible, and many other books. Some of those books you can see within my canvas. A lot of those books I was having to reread to basically just increase fluency, pronunciation, and comprehension, which you can see some of those little words that I incorporated on the canvas as well. In my literacy narrative, I basically went in to say that I felt like teaching kids from a young age how to read and write was very important because it was beneficial for me. I felt like it set me up for a pathway of success. It further enhanced my linguistic skills and concentration. but also gave me that quench of thirst. I think it also helped me mature because I was being introduced to different topics about the world and about just everyday life and develop an understanding of those. Something that really was memorable and I think has a huge contribution to my literary journey was a spelling bee that I participated in the 5th grade. It was really embarrassing, but it's still very important to the journey. I went to Indian Trail Elementary School, and in the 5th grade, I was a recipient of our spelling bee that we had. And it took a lot of work to prepare for it, okay? I was so excited because I felt like I was being able to showcase my smartness, right? But I literally took a L, which means I took a loss. I took a loss because I couldn't spell the word squilling. Okay? Squilling. I literally went up onto the podium and was having trouble on spelling the word. I think I was standing on the podium for like a good 2 minutes. And as you can see on my canvas, I showed the way that I originally spelled the word in 5th grade and then compared it to the way it's actually spelled. But I mentioned this because even though it was frustrating at that time, even though it's funny to look back at, I think it really helped me push further as far as like boosting my vocabulary. So as you can see probably in my literacy narrative, I mentioned that I've pretty much been always really good in English. I received distinguished proficiency in diagnostic tests. I showed growth on math tests. I received A's and B's in those English classes. English wasn't really a hard thing for me, but I still obtained obstacles. I think my greatest obstacle, I know my greatest obstacle in my literary journey was my speech impediment. My verbal speech kind of prevented me from reading aloud, taking on to opportunities that I think could really help me boost my journey and my vocabulary and whatnot. But I had an amazing 4th grade teacher. I mentioned her in my literacy narrative, and you can also see her little face on my canvas, and her name was Miss Curry. She was my English teacher in the 4th grade, and I think that she's really pushed me to gain that love for English. She engaged on one-on-one readings. She did popcorn readings with our class, group readings, and just really kind of like created that safe haven to just enjoy reading, enjoy vocabulary, and just progression within learning. As you can probably tell from this long overdue recording, I still have a speech impediment till this day, and the fact that I have braces kind of makes it worse, but I have developed an acceptance towards it, and I don't let that define me, and I'm still kind of working and progressing it daily. I kind of just want to add on that this obstacle has not prevented me from like getting my point across in class, speaking to large crowds, and just showcasing my knowledge. And I take great pride in that, and I think it's just a great contribution to my literary journey because I feel like our obstacles kind of help us give us that extra momentum to do better. So yeah, like I have this little speech bubble, as you can see on the canvas, with like an obstacle in front of it, because just showing that was one of my obstacles of mine. But guess what? I'm jumping over that hurdle, so it's all good. As of today, I still love literacy. I use it in my everyday life. I included a picture on the canvas of like case files because it shows like some of the work that I do in my job, which consists of like reading case files, delivering paperwork and whatnot. And yeah, it's just literacy is used in my everyday life. My most recent pro within my literacy journey is basically being able to organize my thoughts on paper, get my point across, and making parallels. I think is my greatest strength. and being able to apply it to my future career path. I feel like my recent challenge, however, within my literary journey, you can hear my cat meowing in the background, great. But my most recent challenge within my literary journey was shooting for my particular score that I had set for reading in English of the ACT. It was really, really hard, and though I didn't accomplish it, I felt like I got closer to achieving that. But yeah, those are some of the things that I've incorporated in my canvas. There's a little bit of more on my canvas that I could go in further detail, but I feel like you get the gist. Yeah, that was basically my digital remediation. I hope you enjoyed this long overdue video, and thank you.